And you know what? The English, oh no, you can just walk there. It's about 100 miles. I went to the British Museum. I was there for 9 hours. Oh, what an amazing cultural experience. No, I got lost. You can't get out. It's too big. And they give you these directions. How do you get out of here? I've been here for hours. Well, just get down to the ancient Greek exhibit and take a left at Lord Elgin's tablets. If you pass the Rosetta Stone, you've gone too far. Well, how do you get out of here? People from England were lost. They were coming up to me. Excuse me, sir, have you seen the exit? Some of the little ones are starting to give up hope. We went to Windsor Castle. The bus drops you off at the front lawn. You know how big the lawn of a castle is? The purpose of the lawn is so that in days of yore, when armies would invade, they would give up before they got across the lawn. They invaded from France for hundreds of years. They never got across that lawn. They'd get halfway and go, oh. This is bullshit. I can't even see the castle from here. I'm going back to Calais. When I went to England, I was told that the food was not that good. I know I talk a lot about food in my act, but I also realize that it's not everything in life. The food's not good, that's okay. I'll have a great time anyways. That being said, there was a few problems with the food. First of all, England's expensive. It makes Disney World look like a non-profit organization. I went over there with some other comics, and we went to dinner to a nice restaurant. The bill was $700. That check comes to the table. My friends become astronomers. We stayed at a very nice hotel, but it was closed in between lunch and dinner. So there's that no man's land where you can't get any food. So I walk in after walking 9 hours, and I'm starving, and they said, we have tea. Now, I like green tea. They said we have sandwiches with the tea. Okay. They served me tea sandwiches. Somebody already ate most of mine. And this one just has cucumber in it. That's pickle. That comes on the side of the sandwich. Take this back and put a sandwich in it. Then they bring me a scone thingy, and it was good. Put jelly and butter on it. Bring 37 of these. You don't eat much around here, do you? I thought...
Good morning. It's Saturday, Mike Hammer Saturday, and July the 15th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have No Free Lunch, The Rape of the Mind, and I, the Jury by Mike Hammer, with Mike Hammer by Mickey-Spillane. All that and more when I come back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Flying behind into the sun. Here they come.
Thank you. Now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Creativity is the foundation of wealth. All progress comes from the creative minority. Under capitalism, wealth is less a stock of goods than a flow of ideas, the defining characteristic of which is surprise. If it were not surprising, we could plan it, and socialism would work. George Gilder. Human action always includes surprise. This is true in the very nature of things. This element of surprise is not only where human creativity can shine, but it is a large part of the doomed-to-fail nature of collectivism. Deep central planning cannot take into account the creative capacity of human beings. It will always play catch-up.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. So who is the true conservative? He is the person that has the courage of his convictions and is confident in what he knows. He is the person that understands that culture trumps politics. He's not selfish, but minds his own business. He does not go looking for trouble. He is alert. He curbs his curiosity, and he acts like an adult. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He is judgmental and moralizes. He refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why, rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American, and he is better than the socialist. He's a better friend, father, brother, family member, and a better person, period. You have to know that being a true conservative is best, or you are wasting your time. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative suggested federal political priorities? Number 1, recognize that the government has no rights. 2, defund Planned Parenthood. 3, replace the Affordable Care Act. 4, institute zero-based budgeting. 5, prohibit collective bargaining for all public employees. 6, assign criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. 7, immediately repeal the Patriot Act. 8, immediately repeal all emergency dictator laws. 9, reinstate writs of outlawry. 10, use taxpayer funds to sponsor recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 11, create a flexible minimum wage. 12, means test health care. 13, immediately and permanently prohibit investment banking by any office holder. And 14, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Bring back hierarchy. Bring back the admiration of intelligence, morality, and beauty. Bring back single-income households. Integration, parenting, the primacy of existence, certainty of knowledge, and universal rights and wrongs. Bring back principled behavior, masculinity and femininity. Bring back Adam 12, John F. Kennedy, the gold standard, pre-HMO medical care, and nonprofit news. Bring back civil service, the term stupid question, arguments and fights, the cultural influence of the church and the Boy Scouts. Bring back the influence of social organizations such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club. Bring back bowling. Back in a minute. And now, the rape of the mind.
Chapter 3. Medication into submission. As we have already seen in the preceding chapters, it is not only the political and Pavlovian pressure that may drag down man's mind into servile submissiveness, there are many other human habits and actions which have a coercive influence. All kinds of rumors have been circulated telling how brainwashees, before surrendering to their inquisitor, have been poisoned with mysterious drugs. This chapter aims to describe what medical techniques, not only drugs, can do to reach behind man's inner secrets. Actually, the thought control police no longer need drugs, though occasionally they have been used. I will touch upon another side to this problem as well, namely our dangerous social dependence on various drugs, the problem of addiction, making it easier for us to slip into a pattern of submissiveness. The alcoholic has no mental backbone anymore when you give him his drink. The same is true for the chronic user of sedatives or other pills. The use of alcohol or drugs may result in a chemical dependency, weakening our stamina under exceptional circumstances. In the field of practical medicine, magic thinking is still rampant. Though we flatter ourselves that we are rational and logical in our choice of therapy, somewhere we know that hidden feelings and unconscious motivations direct the prescribing hand. In spite of the therapeutic triumphs of the last 50 years, the area of chemotherapy and antibiotics, let us not forget that the same means of medical victory can be used to defeat our purposes. No day passes that the mail does not flood the doctor's office with suggestions about what to use in his clinical practice. My desk overflows with gadgets and multicolored pills telling me that without them, mankind cannot be happy. The propaganda campaign reaching our medical eyes and ears is often so laden with suggestions that we can be persuaded to distribute sedatives and stimulants where straight critical thinking would deter us, and we would seek the deeper causes of the difficulties. This is true not only for modern pharmacotherapy, the same tendencies can also be shown in psychotherapeutic methods. This chapter aims to approach the problem of mental coercion with the question, how compulsive can the use of medical drugs and medical and psychological methods become? In the former chapters on menticide, I was able to describe political attempts to bring the human mind into submission and servility. Drugs and their psychological equivalents are also able to enslave people. Dependency on the drug provider. Not long ago, I was asked to give advice to a couple who had marital difficulties for a long time. Although at the time of their marriage, the husband and wife were deeply in love, each had brought to his adventure of happiness the wrong emotional investment. She had expected him to be a kind of Hollywood hero, an eternal gallant, dedicated completely to her. He had been touched by her childlike dependency, but secretly, he had hoped she would be mother, nurse, and companion to him. As might have been predicted, neither partner lived up to the other's expectations. Both were bitterly disappointed, and neither realized what was wrong. After a while, the wife became a whining, complaining nag. There were daily scenes, arguments, and recriminations. The husband began to seek solace away from home, with women he had known before his marriage. Soon thereafter, the wife found herself unable to sleep, and started to take barbiturates to bring herself the soothing forgetfulness of slumber. She became completely dependent on them, and retreated into all kinds of vague bodily complaints, which could be relieved temporarily by more drugs. When the husband first discovered this, he was appalled. But gradually, he noticed that the drugs seemed to modify and ease the discord of their relationship. Under almost constant sedation, his wife was no longer a shrew. Indeed, she was no longer even interested in him. He discovered that he had much more freedom and could spend his evenings and holidays as he chose, as long as he provided her with wherewithal for those magic pills that had restored peace to their home. But one night, the wife took an overdose of barbiturates, and it looked almost as if she had attempted suicide. This nearly fatal occurrence aroused all the husband's guilt feelings, and he sought medical and psychological help in an effort to discover what had gone wrong in the marriage of two people who had felt so much initial love and goodwill. This is only one of many cases in which the sleeping pill and drug habit covers up deep-seated, unspoken unhappiness. The growing dependency on easy escape into a soft and mild-appearing sedation and oblivion is an evil we must recognize. The general increase in the use of sleeping drugs is alarming, and the number of suicides resulting from barbiturates is growing every year. Nor can we look at such a phenomenon as simply a medical problem. Dependence on alcohol, barbiturates, drugs, and other soporifics indicates latent and overt social fear and anxiety, and the need to escape from reality. Drugs seem to their users to be the miracle tablets which provide a passive and magic solution to all problems, and bring them to a point beyond the boundaries of the real world. The leader of a gang who is able to provide such drugs for his members is sure of their servility.
And that was Medication into Submission by Joost-Meerlo from The Rape of the Mind. Thank you. Now, Chapter 9 of I, the Jury from Mickey-Spillane.
Chapter 9. We left the place exactly as it was. Pat whistled for a patrolman and had him stand guard inside the door. All exits to the house had been blocked off, and the crowd milled within the ring of cops on the main floor. 2 other captains and an inspector joined us. I threw them a nod and ran for the back of the house. Those shootings had taken place not 2 minutes before we came in. If the killer wasn't in the crowd, he was just around the corner. I found the back door in a hurry. It led into an undersized yard that was completely surrounded by an 8-foot-high fence. Someone had taken the trouble to keep the grass cut and the place cleaned out. Even the fence had been whitewashed. I went around that place looking for prints, but the grass hadn't been trampled in a week. If anyone had gone over that fence, he certainly would have left some sort of a mark. There was none. The cellar opened into the place, but the door was locked from the outside with a padlock. So was the door that led between the building and the one next door. The killer never took the back way. I jumped the steps into the small kitchen and went through the hall to the showroom. Quite a place. All the restraining partitions had been torn down and a stage set up at one end. The cops had the audience back in the cushioned movie-type seats, and the girls of the show herded into a compact group on the stage. Pat came at me from across the room. "What about the back?" he asked breathlessly. "Nothing doing. He didn't go that way." "Well, then the killer is in here. I couldn't find a place even a mouse could get out. The streets are blocked, and I got some men behind the houses." "Let's go over the gang here," I said. The both of us went down the rows of seats looking over the faces that didn't want to be seen. And there was going to be a lot of fixing done tomorrow if some of these jokers didn't want to lose their happy homes. We searched every face. We were looking for George Kalecki, but he either got out in time or never was there. Neither was the madam. The homicide boys arrived, and we went to Eileen's room. They found what I expected them to find. Nothing. Downstairs, I could hear the anguished wails of the girls and the louder voices of some of the men yapping in pretty determined tones. How the commissioner was going to get around this was beyond me. When the pics were taken, Pat and I took a good look of what was left of Hal Kynes. With a pencil, I traced a few very faint lines along his jawline. "Very neat, isn't it?" Pat shot a quick look at me. "Neat enough, but tell me about it. I know who, but not why." I had difficulty keeping my voice under control as I spoke. "Hal isn't a college kid. I caught that when I saw a shot of him and George against the background of the Morrow Castle, but I never fitted it in. This bastard was a procurer. I told you George had his finger in the rackets. I thought it was the numbers, but it turned out to be more than that. He was part of a syndicate that ran houses of prostitution. Hal did the snatch jobs, very subtly, then turned them over to George. It wouldn't surprise me if Hal had been the big cheese." Pat looked more closely at the lines on his face and pointed out a few more just under his hairline. They were hard to see because the blood had matted the hair into a soggy mass. "Don't you see, Pat?" I went on. "Hal was one of these guys who looked eternally young. He helped nature a bit with a few plastic surgery operations. Look at those yearbooks we found. Every one from a different college. That's where he got his women. Small-town girls going to an out-of-state school. Knocks them up, puts the squeeze on them, and here they are. God knows how many he got from each place. I bet he never spent more than a semester in a place. Probably worked out a scheme for falsifying his high school records to gain admittance, then got busy with his dirty work. Once he had the dames, they couldn't get out of it any more than a mobster can break away from the gang." "Very cute," Pat said. "Very cute." "Not too," I told him. "This wrecks my theory. I had him slated for the first kill, but I know now he didn't do it. Jack got onto him somehow, and either Hal saw the books in his apartment and caught wise, or the other one did. This was why Jack wanted the place raided tonight, before this could happen. He knew Hal would be here, and he wanted him caught with his pants down. If I had taken his advice, Eileen might have been alive. Pat walked over to the wall and dug the slug out of the plaster with a penknife. The one in Eileen hadn't gone all the way through. The coroner was busy dislodging it. When he had it out, he handed it to Pat. Under the light, Pat examined them carefully before he spoke. Then, "They're both 45s, Mike, and dum-dums." He didn't have to tell me that. "Somebody sure likes to make sure they stay dead," I said through tight lips. "The killer again. There's only one. The same lousy bastard that shot Jack. Those slugs will match up sure as hell. Damn," I spat out. "He's kill crazy. Dum-dums in the gut, head, and heart. Pat, I'm going to enjoy putting a bullet in that crazy son of a bitch more than I enjoy eating. I'd sooner work him over with a knife first." "Well, you're not going to do anything of the sort," Pat remarked softly. The coroner's men got the bodies out of there in a hurry. We went downstairs again and checked with the cops who were taking down the names and addresses of the people. The patrol wagon was outside, and the girls were loading into it. An officer came up to Pat and saluted him. "No one got through the line, sir." "Okay. Have some men hold, and the rest search the alleyways and adjacent buildings. Make everyone identify himself satisfactorily or arrest them. I don't care who they are. Understand?" "Yes, sir." The cop saluted and hurried away. Pat turned to me. "Oh, this madam, would you recognize her again?" "Hell yes. Why?" "I have a folder of persons convicted or suspected of running call houses at the office. I want you to look them over. We got her name from the girls, or at least the only name they knew her by. She was called Miss June. None of the guests here knew her at all. Half the time, one of the girls answered the door. She always came herself if the proper signal wasn't given." I held Pat back a moment. But what about George Kolecki? He's the guy I want." Pat grinned. "I have the dragnet out for him. Right now, 1,000 men are looking for the guy. Think you stand a better chance?" I let that one ride. Before I went looking for George Kolecki, I wanted to do a few other things first. Even if he was the killer, there were others behind the racket that had to be nailed, and I wanted them all, not just the trigger puller. It was like a turkey dinner. The whole outfit would be the meal, the killer the dessert. I wish I knew how Jack had gotten the lead on Hal. Now, I would never know. But Jack had connections. Maybe he had run across Hal before, or knew Kolecki's end of it and suspected the rest. And when he met up with Eileen, put two and two together. A guy that operated as long as Hal had couldn't cover himself completely. There had to be a break in the trail somewhere. Whatever Jack did, he did it fast. He knew right where to look to find John Hanson, and he found him the way we did, and maybe plenty more times in the yearbooks of the colleges. Even if Hal killed Jack, how did his own murderer get the gun? That weapon was as hot as the killer, and not a toy to be passed around. No, I don't think Hal killed Jack. He might have spotted the books and told someone else. That would be the killer. That was what the killer was after. Or was it? Maybe it was just incidental. Maybe the killer only had a remote tie-up with Hal. If that was it, Jack was killed for another reason, and the killer, knowing there still was the bare possibility of being traced through that tie-up, didn't take the chance and swiped the books to keep Hal clean. And where the hell did that leave me? Right up the creek again. I couldn't sit back and wait for something to happen again and work from there. Right now, I had to start thinking. Little things were beginning to show their heads. Not much, but enough to show that behind it all was a motive. I didn't see it yet, but I would. I wasn't after a killer now. I was after a motive. I told Pat that I was going home to bed, and he wrote me a pass to get through the police lines. I walked down the street and gave the note to a red-faced cop and went on. A cruising cab came by, and I grabbed it to Jack's apartment. My buggy was still outside, and after I paid off the cabbie, I got in my own heap. There was a lot of work to do tomorrow, and I needed some sleep. 20 minutes later, I was home in bed smoking a cigarette before I went to sleep, still thinking. I couldn't get anywhere, so I crushed out the butt and turned over. My first stop after breakfast was Kolecki's apartment. As I expected, Pat had been there before me. I asked the cop on duty at the entrance if there was any message for me, and he handed over a sealed envelope. I ripped the flap open and pulled out a sheet of paper. Pat had scrawled, "Mike, nothing here." He pulled out without bothering to pack a bag. He signed it with a large P. I tore the note up and dumped the pieces in a trash basket outside the apartment house. It was a fine day. The sun was warm and the streets full of kids making a racket like a pack of squirrels. I drove to the corner and stopped in a cigar store where I put in a call to Charlotte's office. She wasn't there, but her secretary had been told to tell me that if I called, I could find her in Central Park on the 5th Avenue side near 68th Street. I drove in from the cutoff on Central Park West and drove all around the place, circling toward 5th. When I came out, I parked on 67th and walked back to the park. She wasn't on any of the benches, so I hopped the fence and cut across the grass to the inside walk. The day had brought out 1,000,000 strollers, it seemed like. Private nurses in tricky rigs went by with a toddler at their heels, and more than once I got the eye. A peanut vendor had just finished giving me change when I saw Charlotte. She was pushing a baby carriage toward me, waving her hand frantically to catch my attention. I hurried up to her. "Hello, kitten," I said. It made my mouth water to look at her. This time, she had on a tight green suit. Her hair resembled a waterfall cascading over her collar. Her smile was brighter than the day. "Hello, Mike. I've been waiting for you." She held out her hand and I took it. A firm grip, not at all like a woman's. Without letting go, I hooked her hand under my arm and fell behind the carriage. "We must look like the happiest newlyweds in the world," she laughed. "Not so new," I said, motioning toward the carriage. Her face flushed a little, and she rubbed her head against mine. "How come you're not working?" I asked her. "On a day like this? Besides, I don't have an appointment until 2, and a friend asked me if I would mind her child while she attended to some business." "You like kids?" "I love them. Someday, I'm going to have 6 of my own." I whistled. "Wait up. Take it easy. Maybe I won't make that much money. 6 mouths are a lot to feed." "And so what? I'm a working girl, and, is that a proposal, Mr. Hammer?" "Could be." I grinned. "I haven't been pinned down yet, but when I look at you, I'm ready to be." If the conversation had gone any further, there's no telling where it would have wound up. But I got back to the case again. "By the way, Charlotte, have you seen the morning papers?" "No. Why?" She glanced at me curiously. "Hal Kynes is dead." Her jaw dropped and wrinkles of amazement appeared in her forehead. "No," she breathed heavily. I took a tabloid out of my back pocket and showed her the headlines. I could see that she was taken aback. "Oh, Mike, that is terrible. What happened?" I pointed toward an empty bench. "Can we sit down a few minutes?" Charlotte consulted her watch and shook her head. "No," she told me. "I have to meet Betty in a few minutes. Tell you what, walk me to the gate, then we can drive back to my office for a few drinks after I meet her. You can tell me on the way." I went through the entire previous evening without omitting a detail. Charlotte listened carefully without once asking a question. Her mind was trying for the psychological aspect of it. I had to stop near the end. Betty was waiting for her. After the introduction, we had a few minutes' chat and said goodbye to Betty, who walked off with the baby. We went in the other direction, following the stone wall of the fence to 67th. I don't think we had gone more than 10 feet when a car pulled abreast of us. No time to think. I saw the ugly snout of the gun sticking out the window and landed in a heap on Charlotte. The bullet smashed the wall waist-high, throwing rock splinters in our faces. George Kolecki didn't have time for a second shot. He threw the car into gear and went tearing down 5th Avenue. If it had worked, it would have been perfect. No other cars around to give chase. For the first time, not even a taxi. I picked Charlotte up and dusted her off. Her face was white and shaken, but her voice was steady enough. 2 strollers came hurrying up, thinking we had fallen. Before they reached us, I got the slug from the dirt under the wall where it had dropped. It was a .45. I thanked the 2 who tried to help us, explaining that we had tripped, and we went on. Charlotte waited a moment, then said, "You're getting close, Mike. Somebody wants you out of the way." "I know it, and I know who that was. Our friend Kolecki." I gave a short laugh. "He's scared. It won't be long now. That skunk is ready to break any minute. If he weren't, he wouldn't make a play for me in broad daylight." "Oh, but Mike, please, don't laugh about it. It wasn't that funny." I stopped and put my arms around her shoulders. I could feel her trembling a little. I'm sorry, darling. I'm used to being shot at. You might have gotten hit, too. Here, let me take you home. You'll have to change your clothes. That spill didn't do you much good. Charlotte didn't speak much riding home. She started to, but stopped. Finally, I said, "What is it, Charlotte?" She frowned a little. "Do you think it was because of the rash promise you made to Jack after he was killed that Kalecki wants you out of the way?" "Maybe. That's the best reason I know of. Why?" Could it be that you know more than anyone else concerning this whole affair?" I thought that over a moment before I said, "I don't think so. The police have every bit of information I have, except perhaps the incentive and the personal insight I picked up." We drove on in silence after that. It was nearly 10 o'clock when we got to the apartment. We went up the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator and rang the bell. No one came to the door, and Charlotte fumbled for her key. "Damn," she said. "I forgot. This is the maid's day off." We went inside, and the bell rang again when we opened the door. "Make a drink while I shower, Mike." Charlotte laid a bottle of bourbon on the coffee table and went into the kitchen for some ice and ginger ale. "Okay. Do you mind if I use your phone first?" "Not at all. Go right ahead," she called back. I dialed Pat's number and had to wait for the operator to go through a half-dozen extensions before he finally located him. "Pat." "Yeah, Mike. Go ahead." "Get this. Kalecki didn't take a powder. He's still in the city." "Well, how do you know?" "He tried to dust me off a little while ago." Pat listened intently as I gave him the details. When I got through, he asked, "Did you get the number of the car?" It was a late model caddy, about a 41, dark blue with lots of chrome. He passed me going toward the city. "Swell, Mike. I'll put it on the air. Have you got the bullet with you?" "Hell yes, and it's a 45, too. Better get ballistics to check it. This one wasn't a dum-dum, though. Just a nice, normal slug. Suppose I drive down to see you this afternoon." "Do that," Pat answered. "I'll be here the rest of the day unless something breaks. And one other thing, Mike," he added. "Yeah?" "We checked the slugs that killed Kynes and the Vickers woman." "They came from the same gun? The one that..." "Right, Mike. The killer again." "Damn," I said. I hung up and took the slug from my pocket. Maybe it would match. Maybe not. I was thinking of the rod Kalecki had in his luggage under his bed. And he had a permit for it, too, he said. I wished now that I had taken that gun along to compare it in a ballistics box instead of leaving it to my sense of smell and sight to determine whether or not it had been fired recently. I wrapped the hunk of metal in a wad of paper and stuck it in my pocket, then whipped up a pair of highballs. I called out to Charlotte to come and get it, but she yelled for me to bring it in to her. And maybe I should have waited a second, or knocked. I did neither. Charlotte was standing beside the bed, completely naked. When I saw her beautiful body that way, my blood boiled inside me, and the drink shook in my hand. She was more beautiful than I imagined. So damn smooth. She was more startled than I. She made a grab for the robe on the bed and held it in front of her, but not before I saw a blush suffuse her entire body. She was having as hard a time getting her breath as I was. "Mike," she said. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke, and her eyes never left mine. I turned my back while she slipped into the robe, then turned back and handed her the drink. Both of us finished them in one draft. It added nothing to the fire that was running through me. I felt like reaching out and squeezing her to pieces. We put the glasses down on the dresser top. We were awfully close then. One of those moments. She came into my arms with a rush, burying her face in my neck. I tilted her head back and kissed her eyes. Her mouth opened for me, and I kissed her, hard. I knew I was hurting her, but she didn't pull away. She returned that kiss with her lips, her arms, and her body. She was on fire, too, trying desperately to get close to me through space that wasn't there anymore. I had my arm around her shoulders and my hands fastened in her hair, crushing her to me. Never before had I felt like this, but then never before had I been in love. She took her mouth away from mine and lay in my arms, limp, breathing heavily, her eyes closed. "Mike," she whispered, "I want you." "No," I said. "Yes, you must." "No." "But Mike, why? Why?" "No, darling, it's too beautiful to spoil. Not now. Our time will come, but it must be right. I put my arm under her and carried her out of the room. If I stayed in that bedroom any longer, I couldn't have held on to my sanity. I kissed her again as she lay in my arms, then put her down outside the bathroom door and mussed her hair. "Go take your shower," I said in her ear. She smiled at me through sleepy eyes and entered, then closed the door softly. I picked up the glasses and for a brief second eyed the bed longingly. Maybe I was a damned fool. I don't know. I went on into the living room. I waited until I heard the shower running before I picked up the phone. Charlotte's secretary answered promptly with the usual hello. "This is Mike Hammer again," I said. "I'm expecting a friend, and I told him to call your office. So when he does, tell him where I went, will you?" "Oh, that won't be necessary," she replied. "He already has. I told him you'd be in the park. Did you miss him?" No, he'll be along," I lied. So, somebody is on my tail, I told myself as I hung up. Good old George. Followed me, lost me, but figured I'd see Charlotte. Very clever. I made another drink, then stretched out on the sofa. He must have tailed me, and I never got wise. I couldn't figure how he knew I'd see Charlotte unless it was written all over me. Yeah, they say love is like that. But what a way to get put on the spot. He picked the time and place nicely. If I hadn't ducked, Kalecki would have scored a bullseye. He did his shooting at point-blank range. But what the hell? Kalecki knew the score. If the cops picked him up in the dragnet, it would be a miracle. I'll bet he had plenty of places he could hole up in if the time came. George was a smart apple. I wasn't worried about the police flushing him anymore. Mr. Kalecki was reserved. For me. Pat was going to be awfully sore. Charlotte was out and dressed in record time. Neither of us spoke about what had happened, but each knew that it was foremost in the other's mind. She made herself a drink, then sat down beside me. "How did you know I was coming today?" She gave me a bright smile. "Mike, darling, I've been expecting you ever since I saw you. Or am I doing it wrong?" Not as far as I'm concerned. "But you told me that you like to do the chasing." "Not with you. Time is too damned important." When she settled in my arms, I told her about the call to her office. She didn't like it a bit. "You're not trying to be very careful, Mike. If it is Kalecki, he's smart. Please, Mike, watch yourself. If anything happens to you, You'll what?" "Oh, Mike, can't you see that I love you?" I stroked her golden hair and blew in her ear. "Yes, silly, I can see it. It must be sticking out all over me the same way." "Yes," she said, "it is." We both grinned at each other. I felt like a school kid. "Now, let's get back to business before I rush off to the office," she went on. "You came to see me for something besides just being nice. What was it?" It was my turn to be amazed. "Now, how the hell did you know that?" I demanded. Charlotte patted my hand. "How many times do I have to remind you that I'm a practicing psychiatrist? It doesn't mean that I can read minds, but I can study people, observe their behavior, and determine what lies underneath. Especially," here she gave a coy smile, "when you really take an interest in a person." "You win." I blew a couple of smoke rings and continued. "What I want is everything you know about Hal Kynes." She came back to earth abruptly at the mention of his name. "That's what I thought after you spoke about what happened. Well, you know that he was in a medical school, pre-med to be exact. From what you said, he was there ostensibly to procure women for this vice syndicate. Isn't that an unusual way of doing it?" "No, not when you know people," I said. "In order to have a good hold on the girls, they have to break them away from their homes, then get them trapped in the mill. I imagine they have some sort of evidence concerning their activities that they hold over their heads. So, what can the girls do? They've been betrayed, kicked out of their homes, no one to turn to. But the door is open to the old profession. At least they can eat and have a roof over their heads, and make plenty of cash. Then once they're in, they can't get out even if they wanted to. It takes time, but it's big business and pays off. Using a method like this, Hal could get the girl he wanted without running too much of a personal risk." "I see." She mulled over what I had said a moment, then gave me the rest. "Anyway, I gave a lecture at the school by invitation of the board, and after examining the records and work of the student body specializing in psychiatry, chose several students to study my clinical methods. Hal Kynes was one of them. He was an excellent worker, knew what he was doing every minute. He was far in advance of the others. At first, I credited it to natural ability and a medical home background. But now, I can see that it was simply the result of so much training in the field. After 16 years of being exposed to teaching, you're bound to pick up something. I guess so, I cut in. How about his outside contacts? He lived in an apartment hotel 3 blocks from me while he was here. During the time he was at school, he lived in a dorm, I suppose. On weekends, he would visit the clinic and stay with Mr. Kalecki. Hal never spoke much about outside matters. He was so wrapped up in his work. He was in a scrape one day, and Jack Williams helped him out. I nodded. Yeah, I know all about that from Hal himself. But what about his personal side? Did he ever make a pass at you? No, never attempted one. Do you think he might have been after me to join his syndicate? Why, that dirty... I stopped there when I saw her laughing silently at me. I doubt that. You were too smart to get caught in that kind of web. I think he was with you either to have an excuse to stay in the city or really study psychiatry to help him in his work. Did it ever occur to you that he might have been here to kill Jack? That idea wasn't a new one to me. I'd been playing with it all day. It could have been. I thought it over. Maybe he was here because Jack had already caught on and was making him stay. Jack was soft-hearted, but not when it came to a thing like that. Not being in the department any longer, he couldn't put the screws on him officially, but held something over his head to make him stay. Then who killed Jack/Hal? That, I said, is something I'd give both legs and one arm to know. Just so long as I have one arm to shoot with, and that's something I'm going to find out before long. And what about Hal and this girl, Eileen? The killer got them both. The way I see it, Hal Kynes went there to kill the girl, but before he got the chance, the killer knocked them both off. But if that was the case, how would Jack have known he would be there to kill her? You've got something there, Charlotte. Maybe Jack knew he'd be there for some other reason. Think so? Perhaps. Either that, or he knew the killer would be there too. But until then, the killer hadn't killed, so he had another purpose in the visit. Sounds sort of scrambled, doesn't it? You're not kidding. I laughed. But as the plot thickens, it thins out too. Whatever the motive, it takes in a lot of people. 3 of them are dead. One is running around the city, taking pot shots at me, and the killer is someplace sitting back quietly giving all of us the horse laugh. What the hell? Let him laugh. He won't be doing it much longer. There's too many people working on this case, and they'll uncover something. Murder is a hard thing to hide. Pat is setting a fast pace in this race. He wants the trigger-happy son as badly as I do, but I'll be damned if he's going to get him. From now on, I'm going to get out in front of Pat and stay there. Let him stick close to my heels. When the time comes for me to put a bullet in the killer's gut, I'm going to be alone. Just me, the rat, and a single bullet. It'll go in neat, right in the soft part of the belly. One steel-jacketed slug that will be as effective as 10 dum-dums. Charlotte was listening intently, her eyes wide. She was making a typical study of me, as though she were hearing the story of a confessed murderer and trying to analyze the workings of the mind. I cut in short and gave her a friendly push. Now you think I'm off my nut, I bet. No, Mike, not at all. Have you been like that just since the war? So hard, I mean? I've always been like that, I said, as long as I could remember. I hate rats that kill for the fun of it. The war only taught me a few tricks I hadn't learned before. Maybe that's why I lived through it. I checked my watch. It was getting late. If you want to keep your appointment, you'd better hurry. Charlotte nodded. Drive me back to the office? Sure, get your coat. We drove back slowly, timing it so that we'd have as much time together as possible. We made small talk, mentioning neither the case nor the near affair in the apartment. When we reached Park Avenue and turned off to stop, Charlotte said, "When will I see you again, Mike?" "Soon," I answered. "If the joker that called today to see where I went tries it again, have your secretary tell him that I'm meeting you on this corner. Then try to get hold of me, and maybe we can ambush the lug. It was Kalecki, all right. Your secretary will probably recognize his voice when she hears it again." "Okay, Mike. What if Mr. Chambers calls on me?" "In that case, verify the story of the shooting, but forget about the phone call. If we can trap him, I want it to be my own party. She leaned in and kissed me again before she left. As she walked away, I watched the flashing sleekness of her legs disappear around the corner. She was a wonderful woman, and all mine. I felt like I should let out a loud whoop and do a jig. A car honked behind me, so I threw the car into gear and pulled away from the curb. I was stopped for a red light 2 blocks away when I heard my name yelled from across the street. The cars alongside me obscured the person, but I could see a brown-suited figure dancing between them, trying to get to my jalopy. I opened the door, and he got in. "Hello, Bobo," I said. "What are you doing up this way?" Bobo was all excited over meeting me. "Golly, Mike, sure is nice seeing you. I work up here. No place special, just all the places." Words bubbled out of him like out of a water faucet. "Where are you going?" "Well, I was going downtown, but maybe I can drive you someplace. Where are you going?" Bobo scratched his head. Let's see. Guess I can go downtown first. Gotta deliver a letter around Canal Street." "Swell, I'll drop you off there." The light turned and I swung onto Broadway and turned left. Bobo would wave at the girls on the street, but I knew how he felt. "Hear anything more about Kalecki?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nah, something's happened to him. I saw one of the guys today and he ain't working for him no more." "How about Big Sam's place? No news from there?" "Nope. Anyway, since you beat up the 2 jigs, nobody will talk to me. They're scared I might get you after him." Bobo let out a gleeful chuckle. "They think I'm a tough guy too. My landlady heard about it and told me to stay away from you. Isn't that funny, Mike?" I had about as many friends as a porcupine up that way. "Yeah," I said. "How's the bee situation?" "Oh, good. Got me a queen bee. Hey, that wasn't true what you said. A queen bee don't need a king bee. It said so in the book." "Then how are you going to get more bees?" That puzzled him. "I guess they lay eggs or something," he muttered. Canal Street lay straight ahead, so I let Bobo out when I stopped for the red light. He gave me a breezy so long and took off down the street at a half-trot. He was a good kid. Another harmless character. Nice, though.
And that was Chapter 9 of I the Jury by Mickey-Spillane. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.